It's always a bit tough to fit a topic like this into a single page. So this month I wanted to take a few minutes and just talk you through it. At the center of this one-pager is a pretty simple question. Can fewer, wealthier tourists actually reduce impacts on the community? On the surface, it makes a lot of sense. If each visitor spends more, then maybe you need fewer visitors overall to generate the same economic benefit. And for communities that are feeling overwhelmed by tourism, that can sound like a really practical solution. But when you dig into it, the reality is a lot more complex. In my 2025 research, I found that destinations with larger wealth gaps between the visitors and the residents tend to have a lower resident sentiment towards tourism. Now, I want to be clear here. This is an association and it's not causation. It definitely needs more research. But it caught my attention, and honestly, it's also matched what I saw earlier in my career. Back in the late 1990s and early 2000s, I was working in the Asia Pacific region. A lot of destinations that were growing really quickly there, often places that were resource rich but relatively low income. It was quite common to hear residents and workers talk about tourists in a very particular way. They often felt like second-class citizens in their home community. There was tension, and at times the view was that tourism was extractive. So when that same pattern showed up in the data, out of nearly 100 variables, it really stood out. That led me to start thinking more about what might be driving this and what it means long term. One of the biggest and honestly least visible is a piece called economic leakage. It's simply how much money that visitors spend that actually stays in the community. With high-end tourism, a lot of infrastructure like hotels, resorts, services are often owned by outside investors or multinational companies due to the upfront capital needs. So while the spending happens locally, profits don't always stay there. There's also what we call import leakage. Higher-end visitors often expect certain brands, specific brands like food and experiences from home. So businesses import these products to meet expectations, which again means less money circulating locally. At the extreme end of this, you see what's often called enclave tourism. Things like inclusive resorts where visitors rarely leave the property or engage with the local economy or the people at all. So on paper, spending looks strong, but in reality, less of it is reaching the local workers, businesses, and residents. Housing is another big piece of this, and one of the most studied. Higher income visitors tend to increase demand for second homes, vacation properties, and real estate investment. And in places with limited housing supply, that creates real pressure, drives up prices, and it reduces availability. Residents are keenly aware of this, and in many of the communities I work with, short-term rentals come up again and again as a major pain point, especially in those more mature destinations. Then there's pricing more broadly. When visitors have a higher willingness to pay, they start competing with residents in everyday markets, like restaurants, retail, services. That's the key word here, competing. Over time, businesses adjust. Prices go up, and you start to see new businesses catering to higher-end visitors, often backed by outside investment again. That can lead to the displacement of locally owned businesses. In interviews and focus groups, I hear this a lot. Longtime residents talk about their favorite local places that disappeared as tourism grew. Now, any one of these dynamics can have an impact, but when you put them together, a bigger picture starts to emerge. A high-end tourism strategy might reduce the number of visitors, but it doesn't necessarily reduce the impact. In many cases, it just shifts it from visible issues like congestion and crowding to less visible, but often more persistent. So challenges like affordability, economic leakage, and business displacement. So at a high level, the takeaway is this. Focusing only on attracting higher-end visitors is not a silver bullet. And in some cases, it may actually create longer-term challenges that are much harder to reverse once they're in place.